Hi.
Hello again. We're in the Proclaimer's book on page 51 at the bottom. No, sorry, page 67 at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
We were more than hinting last time that Rutherford had something up his sleeve,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a legality, a legal technicality that he apparently knew about and nobody else did, that caused him to be able to oust four of the directors appointed directly by Russell
Mm-hmm.
and put in his own appointees, four of them, to replace these. It even says forthrightly that he appointed their replacements.
Mm-hmm.
There was no vote on that.
Yeah.
So the next paragraph at the bottom of page 67 says, "It turned out that although the four opposing directors had been appointed by Brother Russell, these appointments had never been confirmed by vote of the corporation members at the annual meeting of the society. Therefore, the four of them were not legal members of the board of directors at all." Rutherford had been aware of this, but had not mentioned it at first. Why not? He had wanted to avoid giving the impression that he was going against Brother Russell's wishes. However, when it became evident that they would not discontinue their opposition, Rutherford acted within his authority and responsibility as president to replace them with four others whose appointments were to be confirmed at the next annual meeting to be held in January 1918.
On August 8, the disgruntled ex-directors and their supporters left the Bethel family. They had been asked to leave because of the disturbance they had been creating. They soon began spreading their opposition by an extensive speaking and letter-writing campaign throughout the United States, Canada, and Europe. As a result, after the summer of 1917, a number of the congregations of Bible students were split into two groups, those loyal to the society and those who were easy prey to the smooth talk of the opposers.
But might the ousted directors, in an effort to gain control of the organization, try to influence those attending the annual meeting? Anticipating such a reaction, Rutherford felt it advisable to take a survey of all the congregations. The results, according to the report published in the Watchtower of December 15, 1917, those voting indicated their overwhelming support of J.F. Rutherford and the directors cooperating with him. This was confirmed at the annual meeting. The opposers' efforts to gain control had failed.
What became of those opposers and their supporters? After the January 1918 annual meeting, the opposing ones splintered off, even choosing to celebrate the memorial on March 26, 1918, on their own. Any unity they enjoyed was short-lived, and before long they broke up into various sects. In most cases, their numbers dwindled and their activity diminished or ceased entirely.
Clearly, following Brother Russell's death, the Bible students faced a real test of loyalty. As Teresa P. Gott, who was baptized in 1915, put it, quote, "Many of those who had seemed so strong, so devoted to the Lord, began to turn away. All of this just did not seem right, yet it was happening, and it upset us. But I said to myself, was not this organization the one that Jehovah used to free us from the bonds of false religion? Have we not tasted his goodness? If we were to leave now, where would we go? Would we not wind up following some man? We could not see why we should go with the apostates, so we stayed."
Some who withdrew from the organization later repented and associated with the Bible students in worship once again. By far the majority, like Sister Gott, continued to cooperate with the Watchtower Society and Brother Rutherford. The love and unity that bound them together had been built up through years of association together at meetings and conventions. They would allow nothing to break up that bond of union. By 1918, the Bible students had survived testing from within. What, though, if opposition arose from those on the outside?
I guess I'm disturbed by their reference to the disturbance. In the first sentence of the first full paragraph on page 68, they say they had been asked to leave because of the disturbance they had been creating. And then the sentence 4 lines down says, those loyal to the society were one of the 2 groups that were left, and those who were easy prey to the smooth talk of the opposers, that's the other batch.
Yeah.
So again, this judgment of character,
Mm-hmm.
that somehow there's something wrong with those who they accuse of causing the disturbance. But what's the disturbance about?
Well, one thing that on page 63, they'd already said that in the early days of the Watchtower, Macmillan says, okay, where is this? Page 63. Macmillan says, throughout his life, Russell had been the society. So if you're talking about loyalty to the society, I would think that these opposers are faced with a decision of, are we going to follow Russell or are we going to follow Rutherford?
His directors or his directors?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in their minds, they're being loyal to the society because they view Russell as the FDS.
Yeah.
It's still being said that he's the FDS. So to them, they're being loyal.
Yeah, and it continued to be emphasized that he was the faithful, discreet slave for another 10 years after this.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand if we had been there that we would have been divided too as to what does loyalty to Russell look like when it looks like it's a purge and a coup of his directors.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get to the end of at the end of this, we'll put in a link to what they were actually saying about Russell during this period.
Yeah.
What was he called by the Finnish Mystery, the book that's triggered this explosion? The book actually calls him the voice of Jehovah, the man with the writer's inkhorn, the modern Ezekiel, the Laodicean messenger, and it goes on praising him as if he's God himself on earth.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine the kind of turmoil that would be in your spirit that this sister alludes to, Sister Gott.
I don't know when she's being quoted from. I mean, it says she was baptized in 1915, but she talks as if it's already called organization, which wouldn't fit the time anyways, because Russell didn't think in terms of organization. He actually spoke against anything that was too organized.
As being Babylon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So more like Babylon or more like Christendom.
Mm-hmm.
So he was discouraging that. But now they're talking already, or at least she's being quoted maybe when she's older, and talking about it as if it's always been an organization. Then I think it's ironic that she would say, well, I guess her saying, "Where would we go?" makes it sound like it probably is later that she's making this quote. Would we not wind up following some man? Well, that's exactly what they've been doing. It's following a single man. Because all of the writings were Russell, and then all of the writings were Rutherford. That's following a man. At least in Christendom, you're not following a single person. Well, you're never really following a single human person. You're following Christ. But you're listening to a lot of different believers. Witnesses just don't seem to get that. They will always say that you're following men if you read somebody's book other than theirs. Because they have one authority.
Their
books.
She says, we could not see why we should go with the apostates. Well, the whole organization started as an apostasy from Christendom. You're criticizing people from splintering off from you here. I think in the paragraph before Sister Gott gets involved, it talks about the people who left, which would include Paul Johnson and his group. The people that left, any unity they enjoyed was short-lived, and before long they broke up into various sects. In most cases, their numbers dwindled, and then their activity diminished or ceased entirely. And of course, then if you know the history of the next 10 years, from 1917 to 27, you realize most of the witnesses who were here would have been loyal are leaving anyway, because what does Rutherford end up doing but dismissing Russell completely from his status as FDS, voice of Jehovah. And so the splintering goes on. and it goes on for really about a decade, right until basically even the statistics the society themselves put out in the late 20s indicate that there's not even a half of those that were loyal before the Millions campaign started, before the 1925 scandal, and then of course the dumping of Russell altogether. So most of those people are gone.
Yeah, although in that second last paragraph that we read, it said by far the majority. So that doesn't seem to be very accurate.
Yeah, the ones who supported Rutherford at this point were the majority. But most of them apparently had left by 1927. And that makes the irony of the last long paragraph here. The love and unity that bound them together had been built up through years of association together at meetings and conventions. Well, that seems to have soured in the 1920s, when not only did their numbers not grow significantly, but then they had this major fiasco around 1925, and of course the building of Beth Sarim after that.
So we're linking to two videos called Ezekiel and Jehovah's Witnesses, part 1 and 2, where it itemizes all the things they were calling Russell. Yeah.
So the finished mystery was virtually a paean of praise to Pastor Russell. So I can understand why there was such divided loyalty when Rutherford did what he did at the end of 1917.
Okay.
See you soon.